So anyway, I'm going to show you this low power thing that I just picked up here.
Wow, are they worms there?
Well, that they appear to be.
That thing there?
All I can say is that they look like nematode larvae, but let me get it under high power for you and we'll check it out more closely.
So strongyloids are nematodes?
They're nematodes, right.
And they are, which is the same as threadworms.
That's a common name for them, right.
And it's they're also known as filarial.
Well, this particular, their kind of larvae that gets into the blood is called a filarial form larvae, right. Filariform. Not filarial-form, but filariform.
What we're looking at now, that thing that looks like a line, that might be one of those worms.
Correct, yes. They come to a point at one end, see that? And they're a little blunt on the other end, so the tail versus the head. And this is just a microscopic larvae. You would never see it.
Are these commonplace in blood?
Well, what's the definition of commonplace? I'm seeing them much more often than I think. It's very surprising how commonly I see them. Generally about once a week I have a client that I'll see these things in. Right?
Could this be perpetuating leaky gut?
Yes, absolutely, because the adults bore into the lining of the gut and then they're in there and they basically lap up blood. That's what they feed on. They don't feed on your feces and other food like typical gut parasites. So let's just get this thing up under lope.
So how do you kill them?
Well, that's the trick. They are very hard to eradicate. The medical treatment for it is ivermectin. That's the same medication they give to dogs for heartworm larvae.
Do you know about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know ivermectin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you recommend ivermectin?
I've seen ivermectin get rid of them, yes. But it's a very intensive program. It's not like when you go to the doctor and you say, I think I might have a nematode infection. They want to give you 1 to 3 days of an ivermectin dose. And that is totally not effective. And the question is because the ivermectin actually killed the adults in the lining of the GI tract. All right, so here is one end of this one. And all I can say is, do I know for sure that that's what this is? No, and I certainly don't know for sure that this is strongyloides. All I can tell you is that it looks like it. If we look closely, you can see what appears to be a GI tract, what's called an alimentary canal running through the middle of it. You see the tube running through down the middle of this one?
So there are other parasites that look very similar, is what you're saying.
Right. Well,
it's easily mistaken.
There are lots of nematodes. All the nematode larvae look the same.
Okay.
I mean, if you are a specialist, a parasitologist, then you have to identify this based on where this juncture is between the esophagus and the intestine. In this one, you see this is considered the esophagus, and then there's a little kind of section right in the middle that separates the esophagus from the intestinal tract. Okay? And so the way they identify these things is where along this tube that juncture is. Whether it's, higher up, or there's here, whether it's here, whether it's here.
That's the only identifier. Wow.
By looking at it, right.
Wow.
Now, they also try to do genetics testing, like PCR testing for these things.
Is there any way to zoom out of that then and see how far down the digestive tract is to see if we can identify it? Or are you saying you're not quite...
It's usually... to really see where that juncture is, you should stain the sample. You can see that there are some white blood cells that are all about getting after this thing. That's a white blood cell that's sticking to it, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So they can be considered asymptomatic. In other words, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people worldwide are infected with nematodes.
Right.
And if you are immune competent, then you can have no symptoms. In other words, they're established in you, your immune system keeps them under control.
Right.
It's only if you were to get AIDS, for example, or sometimes what's happened in people is they have gotten steroid treatments for some kind of inflammation, because that's what doctors do. When you have inflammation, they want to throw steroids at you.
Yeah.
And there I have read entries into the medical literature where patients have died after steroid treatment, and then they did an elaborate biopsy, autopsy, and found that they had strongyloid infections. So what happened then is that these things were maintained under control by the immune system, but the steroids, of course, inhibit the immune function, especially at high doses, and so then these things disseminated through the body and just went crazy and became life-threatening. So
so these could cause leaky gut, which could cause all this rouleaux.
Yes. Right. Now see the white blood cells on it? See the alimentary canal? That looks like the esophagus still.
But can I consider this good news? Because if I know that I have this, I can go after it,
and maybe you can go after it specifically. Correct. Okay, so there's the tip of this one, right?
Well, Hulda Clark mentioned strongyloids a lot, and I forget what she says to do for them.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it could be also that salt C. Do you think salt C would kill them off? The salt C protocol.
I'll look into it.
I don't know.
It was just interesting, you know. That I was telling you that show the other night about the Dead Sea in was it Egypt?
But anyway, you can
no
see
life
how
in it.
your immune system is definitely going after it, right? But we might think of this as David and Goliath here, but we know that David won, right? So
this is not can't do anything about that.
oh yeah, it can, right?
How? What's the?
Well, how does the immune system keep all these things under control? I don't know. Does it, weaken the organism? Are there multiple genetic or immune system approaches to these? The immune system, if the immune system wasn't keeping it under control, then you'd have a huge disseminated infection of these things, and it would be life-threatening. So,
Right.
but the fact that they're present in the GI tract lining, causing irritation there,
It's possible.
it's definitely possible, right?
So really, one measure is to just boost our immunity, isn't it? To take things like vitamin C and get in shape and eat right and.
Keeping your immune system healthy is going to keep them under control. Is it going to eradicate them? Very possibly not. Otherwise, they would have never gotten established as parasites in the human population. An organism that is a parasite has ways of avoiding eradication by the immune system. Otherwise, it would die in the body of its host and would never be transferred to other living things. That's the thing about Borrelia burgdorferi, right? It's a bacterial parasite that somehow manages the immune function such that it will not be eradicated, and then it's available in the blood to be transmitted from one organism to the next via a vector. They've had millions of years to evolve, to develop, to be created, however you want to look at it.
How does one eat if
you've got these things?
Yeah.
Right? Well, where did they originate? These kinds of things are thought to be tropical and subtropical. What are the foods that are eaten in that?
Pineapples.
Pineapples. The core of pineapples has a lot of bromelain in, which is naturally antiparasitic.
The core, meaning
the core, right. That's where most of the bromelain is in the pineapple.
Uh-huh.
Also, that little base of the stem, right at the, there's a smoothie guy, he's a Qigong guy by the name of Jeff Primack, and he has people get pineapple tops and then take the little, like 1.5 inches at the base of the floret top, down there where the leaves are joining into the pineapple itself. You pull off the leaves and you take that 1.5 inch piece there and you throw it into your smoothie. What else do they have in the tropics? They have papayas and papaya seeds, which also have very anti-parasitic properties, especially the seeds. So if you grind papaya seeds, actually were used on some kids in Africa that were riddled with parasites and thought to be very effective at eliminating in just 10 days 75% of their parasites. Of course, did that eradicate their parasites? No, but at least it knocked them down. So whether you could eradicate them if you took more papaya seeds than that, I don't know. There's actually a smoothie recipe that incorporates the bromelain from the pineapple, coconut fat and coconut milk, and the papaya and papaya seeds. So, you know, again, is it possible to eradicate these things, or just were their native foods helping their bodies to keep these things under control? I think that's probably more the case. And then...
So Amanda shouldn't necessarily try to use any kind of
to eradicate
antibiotics to eradicate them. She should probably just try to adapt the diet to keep them in check.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know whether it's beneficial to try to eradicate them or not. There's a parasitologist by the name of Simon Yu. You could look up some of his stuff.
I know of him.
Okay. And he came up with this protocol for nematodes that is the one that the NIHA is using.
He doesn't even suggest supplements to patients until they've gone after all the parasites.
Simon Yu, you mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember reading that about him.
Okay.
And they must be treating people who are really chronic, though, right? I mean, to get to that stage where they're going to, inject them with really
I've had some
tough drugs.
Quite a number of Lyme folks who have these things in them also. And we know, according to the work of Ava Sappi, that she is finding these nematode larvae in the guts of ticks when she biopsies the guts of ticks and looks at them. And she has tried to identify the genetics of what those tick-borne ones are, and they are not Strongyloides stercolis. They are not Onchocerus. In other words, she's gotten the PCR labels for the known common human nematodes, and she said these are different. There's one that somebody identified that was causing chronic fatigue, he studied a bunch of people with chronic fatigue, and he looked at their sputum, that they would cough up from the lungs, and indeed he found nematode larvae in the sputum. And he tried to run a bunch of tests on them to see if they matched Strongyloides stercolis or whatever, and he couldn't find it. So he renamed it Cryptostrongyloides pulmoni, meaning hidden lungworm. Now, it's been since renamed again to reflect his name, and I can't remember what that is. I read about it recently. So that's one that, again, doesn't match the known common nematode parasites. But who are we to think that medical science has identified all the myriad of parasites in the world?
So this is larva?
This is the larva, right.
So what would we be seeing if we saw the adult?
Well, much bigger. The larvae are 200 to 400 microns long, which is about what we're seeing here. All right. And the adults are about 1 centimeter, which is 100
So we're
microns.
not going to see adults in the blood?
Oh, no. You won't see adults in the blood.
Tissue.
Right, they're in the tissue. Probably. Now, again, if this is Strongyloides stercolis, the cycle of that, the behavior of that is that the adults bore into the lining of the gut and then throw these larvae into the blood and into the stool periodically. There is one nematode, I can't remember the name of that one, starts with an M, but it's a vector-borne nematode carried by a biting fly in the tropics, and the adults of that get established in the body cavity. In other words, in between your organ tissues, and then they also throw larvae into the blood. Well, getting rid of that one is impossible, the adults, because you don't have a blood supply into the body cavity to treat it with antiparasitic drugs or whatever. The only thing you could do is to treat the larvae in the blood periodically, just like with the same way we do with heartworms in dogs. The ivermectin is killing the larvae. I don't know that it has any effect against. They have an antiparasitic drug for the adult heartworms in dogs, which is extremely potent, toxic, and can end up killing the dog in the treatment process. So they don't give that to people, as far as I know. the liability would be just too high.
Mm-hmm.
So
Could this rouleau be because I had, if egg is one of my food sensitivities, because I had egg a half hour ago?
yeah,
Is it that instantaneous?
if you have an IgA reaction to egg, then it causes an inflammatory flare, which would worsen the leaky gut.
And it's that fast. It happens that fast.
Oh yeah, definitely. Anyway, here's the end of the other one, and we'll follow it along its path, its length here.
When does that die if we left it out?
How long would it take to die?
In this blood sample, yeah.
I have no idea. The other larvae, called a rabidiform larvae, the one that they throw into the stool, can live outside of a host for years.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Well, doesn't it turn into an adult?
It goes through a little life cycle. Can't remember that exactly.
Yeah.
But the rabidiform larvae is the one that can actually, if you step in dirt or soil that has these larvae in there, they bore through your skin and get into the blood that way, and then get to the gut and establish themselves as adults in the gut. So they can live free living. You can get them from contact with soil or feces that is contaminated with these things.
But it's really about having your body be inhospitable to the growth of these things, because we are exposed to dirt and bugs all the time.
Right. Here's another one.
Oh, so another one. Is that low power again?
Yeah, this is low power.
So that's another strongyloid-like.
Right, exactly. Well, this is, say, nematode-like larvae.
Nematode-like.
Right.
So we've seen 3 so far.
Oh, wow.
What?
Uh-oh.
So tell me about your travels.
I've been to Mexico 3 times. I drank the water in Mexico. I don't remember that, but Lee said I did.
No, you drank the water in Puerto Rico. And I was like, why are you drinking that? You had like you're having ice pops off the street, and it's like, don't do it. And you're like, oh, who cares?
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I'm sure you're right.
Okay.
Why? What do you see now? Something horrible?
Well, this one has a little forked tail.
Oh, good. Forked tail.
Oh, crap. What does that mean then?
See?
Is that a larva?
This is the larvae. This is the one I just showed you under low power. Now I brought it up under high power, and it's got a little forked tail on it. Well, there's one of these nematodes in Haiti that's thought to can cause the elephantitis, and I saw this in a little girl who was living in Haiti. Her father operates an orphanage down there. She came back up here. When she got into the country, she had this horrible inflammation in her groin area. So her grandmother brought her in to see me, and anyway, I saw this little forked tail thing in her, and then her grandmother went at home and looked at it online and said, oh my gosh, she saw an image of elephantitis nematode that had a forked tail. Now, whether that's just specific to that particular nematode or whether sometimes they can have forked tails, I don't know. But I have seen that. I saw that in that little girl. Why am I suspicious that this is a parasite larvae?
Because the white.
It looks like what's depicted in reference and literature parasitology books as a nematode larvae, number one, because of the tube that runs through it, but also because the immune system is aggressively attacking this.
Right.
If it was just some kind of fiber or artifact in the blood, then it wouldn't draw the attention of the immune system. Okay, we're looking at the larvae, right? He's just kind of all curled up.
What's that? What's that round thing there in the middle?
That's just an air bubble trapped in between there, right?
But no spirochetes.
I
actually haven't been
we haven't
looking around for
Sorry.
them. Well, that looks like a little short one right there.
Yeah.
I haven't seen very many. This is called an echinocyte here with the looks like a sea urchin,
Mm-hmm.
and the membranes on that cell are oxidized. Now, red blood cells, when they are naturally dying by what's called apoptosis, the cell will appear like that. But I've also observed that these are the kinds of cells that when I see bacteria coming out of red blood cells, these are the kind of cells they usually are exiting. So I'm suspicious that if the organism is inside, it generates a lot of free radical waste, and then if the cell membrane isn't protected adequately with glutathione or vitamin E, then it causes that oxidized appearance on the outside of the cell. But I can't look at a cell like that and say, oh, that's infected by bacteria, because it can naturally appear like that at the end of its life cycle, which is about 120 days. Okay, this is the first cyst-like structure I've seen, right here. This appears to be a spirochete cyst, right?
That's when they've crawled up inside, right?
Right,
And they're hiding out.
These are
It does look like that.
these are
doesn't it?
images
Yeah.
of cyst of not Borrelia burgdorferi cyst, but spirochete cyst, and then this is another image of them under phase contrast.
How does one know for sure if one has a tick-borne infection or Lyme?
Well, if you have Borrelia burgdorferi or now a couple other related Borrelia organisms, that's where the Igenex test is the most sensitive.
I had the Igenex test, and I still don't know if I have.
Oh. That was in October?
Yeah, right before I saw you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. They don't, you have a number of serologic bands showing up.
Yeah.
A lot of them, actually. Now, the indeterminate ones are like slightly positive responses.
Yeah, which means a response.
Okay. But you have band 18, which I thought was a fingerprint band for Borrelia burgdorferi. 41 is the flagella of a spirochete, so that definitely says there's a spirochete there. Band 31 and 34 are those two bands that the LabCorp folks do not include. Band 41 is definitively, you have a lot of antibodies against the flagella of a spirochete. Okay, so you have some spirochete in you. Well, that's what we see here. But I thought band 18 was considered fairly definitive for Borrelia burgdorferi. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Positive result for 31-34 may be present after vaccination. That's why the LabCorp test excludes that. Positive results for A393 and 41 may represent in persons infected with, in other words, you can be, or syphilis, you can be false positive for Borrelia burgdorferi if you have these other kinds of infections. Okay, but they don't comment on the band 18. There are a number of Lyme treating physicians that I've met that would interpret this as positive. They consider the indeterminate bands to be positive. Yeah, because that means that you're making some antibody to that specific protein of the Borrelia burgdorferi organism.
But do I have so-called Lyme or not? That's why.
Yeah, well.
I mean, I know I know it's...
Yeah, the whole idea is not to try to identify the... not necessarily to identify the specific organism, but, okay, if there are parasitic spirochetes in you, then they're not good for you. They suck up your nutrients and they exude their waste products.
Yeah.
And so if you work from that perspective to eradicate them or to try to eradicate them no matter what they are, then you're going to be benefiting yourself by getting out of parasitic work. Igenex has gotten pretty conservative about their interpretation because they've really gotten under the gun recently, mostly by insurance companies who are, because they were, if I understand the gossip anyway, that they were getting a lot of flack from insurance companies because they had a broader perspective on interpretation, so they've gotten more conservative about it.